Hello everyone, today we're going to look at the game of the Blitz Championship of Hikaru Nakamura. And a fun fact, as we see on move 2 to the clock, he is more than 2 minutes late to the game. So that will be interesting. So he plays the knight out, c4, and he plays the Nimzo in the defense. This is one of the main lines. Hikaru just castles, and Matthias gets out of the pin of the bishop. So after the knight takes, the bishop takes, and the pawns don't get doubled. Now he plays principal d5, knight f3, and c5. So it's like a rush defense now, with the moves, with these moves, just staring at each other. And Matthias kicks away the bishop takes, and the bishop takes because, like I told you, you don't want to damage your pawn structure. But now the knight jumps in with a tempo on the bishop, so Matthias isn't able to keep the bishop there, so he just defends it with the rook. But Hikaru says, your bishop isn't going anywhere, and my knight is much better than your bishop, so I'll just keep it. And take, and as we see, Hikaru started with 40 seconds, and he now has 52. So that means that he's playing so quickly that he's gaining time with his 2 seconds per move. So he just took back, and now after takes, he takes, and he has this dominant center. But this is what gets called the hanging pawn structure, because if white just develops, and he will put the rooks on the C and D file, staring at these pawns, and these pawns will not be able to be pushed easy forward. So the bishop develops targeting the knight, the bishop develops to the long diagonal, after takes, and Matthias says no queen trade, I'll drop my knight back. And it's an inaccuracy by the computer, but I think it's a nice move because you don't allow white to castle, you put pressure, and because you want to double up, putting even more pressure. And he does offer a queen trade now. Hikaru takes, going to the endgame, because then it's easier to play with low time. And he plays this really nice move, the bishop to the long diagonal, to stop white from castling. And white says, okay, I'm not gonna castle, I'm just putting my king on f2, and you can take. And after you take, I won't take back with my knight. No, I'll just put my king behind to protect these pawns. Maybe my knight goes to the center, and my rook goes on the diagonal towards your king, so I have a really nice attack. And now Hikaru finally develops his knight, and there we see the king moves behind the pawns, and the rook activates to the d file, and the first threat is made because the bishop and the rook are threatening the pawn. So one of the only moves, f6 by Hikaru, he's probably gonna play his rook to this square, and the king going there, and an inaccuracy, but they have low time, so it doesn't really matter. As we see, we are 21 moves in, and Hikaru has still gained 4 seconds, so that means that he's playing very quickly. And now he drops in with the bishop, the same square as the queen, to just disturb all pieces around. So he blocks the bishop, so it can go out that way. And now the rook centralizes, the king moves even further to the center, attacking the bishop. The bishop drops back, and the knight develops, putting pressure on a pawn. So maybe when you move your bishop, you can take the pawn with your knight. But he attacks the rook, the knight, and the knight goes to this square, looking to reroute to the center. And the rook comes up, maybe he wants to double or reroute it all the way there, but the bishop is attacked, so he drops it back. The bishop is attacked once again, he drops it back another time, and now the rook goes to the d file, having this nice vision. So the bishop drops back also, protecting the knight so the rook can move. And now the rook infiltrates, and you receive the doubling on the e-file. The knight comes back to the center, looking at all these important squares. The rook moves up 1 square, and the knight jumps in, attacking the bishop. The bishop gets defended by the knight, and he doesn't take it, he just moves the rook back, trying to reroute this way, and he puts his bishop here, but now very good move, rerouting the knight, attacking the rook, attacking the pawn, and intermediate check. You can take because you're pinned, you can take with the rook because the bishop takes, but he takes anyway. That's because he couldn't really go anywhere with his king, because then he would lose the bishop. So you better give up an exchange than to lose a bishop. And now he takes the exchange back, we check, takes, but now you lose this pawn in front of your king because this one's pinned. So this is the rook that should have protected the pawn but didn't. After the rook goes here, he takes again, because after you take, I take, with check, take, check, take, and then your bishop is hanging. And this is just a winning king and pawn in game, because the king will come to the center. You will push this pawn, but your king goes also active. Then you push the other pawn, and maybe try to stop the expansion of these pawns. But then you just keep pushing, and the king cannot really go anywhere. If it goes back, you move forward, and if they push this pawn, you can just try and win the pawn, because this king isn't fast enough for counterplay, because you just push this one, and if they draw back, you go here, and this is just winning, because you will win this pawn and they will promote this pawn. So that didn't happen, because after this move the rook moved, take, he didn't take, he took the pawn on b3, trying to equalize the material. He's still down a pawn, but he's attacking this one. Check to the king, discover check. So the rook is giving a check, goes to the center. He's trying to reroute, looking for this check. So Hikaru makes a left, so after this check he would just move his king up. So now he pushes his pawn out of the danger. The king comes to the center, and the bishop moves to the long diagonal. And the pawn gets pushed, because they just want to promote it, but the bishop is keeping an eye on this square. It blocks it even to make sure he doesn't make a mistake and blunder the promotion. The rook comes here, and if this check happens, it's deadly, because you will lose the bishop. So the bishop moves, so the rook can give this check. Now the bishop is looking to reroute, and there goes the pawn in the center, and couldn't really take because there was this check. The king would move and he would go around, put pressure on the center pawns. So he wins it like this, and now Hikaru just gets this pawn out of danger, but Matthias just pushes his pawns, and in this position Hikaru resigned, and they both have 30 seconds, so it wasn't really fair because Hikaru was more than 2 minutes late, but it's still a nice game of Matthias beating Hikaru in Hikaru's best time control, we can say, Blitz. But there was a bit too much pressure in this game, especially at the end, where he had all these pawns in the center, his king was active, and the black king wasn't at all. It stood in a corner, not really doing anything, and white was also up a pawn, so had the king activity and the pawns for him, the material. So well played of him against Hikaru. He played at 94.7% accuracy. That's really high for a blitz game against Hikaru. Hikaru wasn't able to hold the game, unfortunately. I hope you all enjoyed the game, learned something from it, and I hope I will see you all in the next video, or maybe in my previous videos. So I see you all later. Have a great day. And